Howdy, Shawna Karrasch here, coming to you from Northern California with an Ask Shawna answer. This one comes from Carrie, and Carrie says, and she's from Australia, she says, my 8-year-old gelding is very shut down when being schooled. He does not come off my leg, and his default gait is definitely stop. I have been using the clicker training for several weeks, and he's picked up the basics very quickly. I know you say to click lots of transitions to increase energy and his go, and this has worked very well on the ground, but not well at all from his back. He still waits until my 4th level of pressure to move off. Since he is so shut down to this, should I perhaps just try with the lightest aid, a cluck perhaps, and wait for forward and then click? Would love to break through with him on this, as he has lovely movement when he does decide to move, which is usually when he is frightened of something. His back, his saddle, his teeth, etc. have all been checked and are fine. Any suggestions would be appreciated. Cheers. Well, good for you, first of all, I have to say, Carrie, for checking on all the physical things. I mean, that's always the first thing you want to do. So good for you. Whenever there's a behavior change or any behavior issue, I just first say, is there something physical going on that I need to address? So it's good. I always want to rule that out first. And then, okay, so what this tells me is you're making the progress on the ground. He's getting it on the ground, but not so good under saddle. So I think what's happening, and like you said, to me it sounds like he's shut down. So something along the lines he associates with the rider and being ridden, and he thinks, I don't want to go. We don't know why. Maybe at some point in time, something bad happened in the saddle. Maybe somebody, maybe he hurt at some point in time. We don't really know what that is, but we do know he thinks, in the saddle, I'm not going to go. So somewhere between I'm good on the ground and I'm not on the saddle, something's shifting, which is taking him to the other place. And I actually see this quite a bit when we shift to under saddle work, because the under saddle work has so much history with it that when they get in, a lot of times they shift to a different place. They kind of say, this isn't that other fun game I love. I know what this is, and this is how I take care of me when we do this. So we want to find some little interim steps in between that can kind of leverage between the two, so it's not just this, and it seems like a little step to us, but to him, I think it seems like a big giant leap. It's on the ground, love this, good, we're doing good, I get the idea, you go here, and it's a bigger leap than we think it is. So what I would suggest doing is, if you can find, have somebody who is good either in the saddle or on the ground, and ideally I would say have somebody that you can put and trust to put in the saddle, and have that person be in the saddle but not do anything. So what I do is I would go on and do your practice like you do on the ground. So just have him, you do your things, your groundwork, that's great. And then I would do that same, no rider yet. And then I do that same groundwork with a saddle. Say, okay, good. And get him, so it's very highly reinforced, very short, not very long, very high rate of reinforcement. So he starts thinking, well, actually, I kind of love this. I hope we're doing that. And so then when that's all going good, then I would put a person in the saddle. But I'd be sure to tell that person, you do not do anything. You are a prop up there. And say, you know what, ignore the person in the saddle and pay attention to me. We're just doing this game that you love. That rider does nothing. So you're kind of having a way that you can transition between what seems like a big step for him. And when you first put that rider in, I'm sure he's going to feel a little bit of conflict. He's going to think, well, rider asked for stuff and I do a different thing, and now we're doing this. What do I do? He's going to choose the one with the strongest reinforcement history. So go back to all the little props that you used in the beginning. Remember, when we shift the context even slightly, we can lose a lot of behavior. So what I suggest you do is you when you put the person in the saddle, go back to what you did in the very, very beginning of the groundwork. So maybe it was just moving the target a little bit and having him follow the target. Click and reinforce that, and that's great. And click and reinforce that. For the first session, I'd say ignore the person in the saddle. The person in the saddle is nothing. It's just a prop up there, so don't worry about it. Just pay attention to me, just like we always did. When you feel like he's going about that just fine and at the normal enthusiasm and the normal brightness and the normal relaxation that he normally does, then I would shift to saying, okay, now as you ask him to do stuff, the person from the saddle is the feed person. So I would have you click from the ground because you're going to be more familiar with the timing, but have that person feed. So now we're starting to, in the tiniest bit, we're shifting the focus now up to the person in the saddle, but the person in the saddle isn't asking for anything yet. But we're just saying, see, now that person is a little bit more significant. As that's going fine, then I would say, okay, now, and during this process, I'd be preparing for utilizing the target to get forward momentum. I'm sure you probably have done some target work, but I would strengthen it so it's really good. So with the person in the saddle, I might say target, good, click reinforce. And when the person's in the saddle and you're asking them to go forward, I would always click activity, not necessarily the completion of touching the target, as opposed to the decision to make a movement. The movement is more important than touching the target. The target is simply creating the movement. So while other times I'll focus more on them touching and complete touching the target, in this situation, I want to look for the initiation of movement. You know, for the decision to move and for the thought. It's that decision. You know, if we always click once they've been trotting for 8 steps, they may not really know what exactly it was. But if we click as they transition to a trot, they've just made a decision and they're creating an action, and their head is still thinking about the action that they're creating in their body. So it's that same kind of thing we work for. So as you ask him to touch the target, I would click the movement or the decision to move, but movement, movement, movement. And that goes really good. That's going great. Then I would start to say, as that's going good, now we have the rider feeding. Now I would have the rider, right before you present the target, I think a cluck is a great idea. If it's a really sour thing, I oftentimes will pick a brand new cue all together, all different, so it doesn't have the old connotation. But I do know that oftentimes I want to get back to riding that I want the cues that are a normal part of riding to be able to use those still, because those are kind of my habits and a lot of horses recognize those, so I want to be able to use them. So I would want to get back to utilizing the cluck probably if it's not completely soured for him. So I think I would use the cluck and then present the target. And as he moves forward, click and reinforce. Cluck and click and reinforce, cluck, reinforce. And then I might go, as that's going good, I might do slight leg and back off, cluck, target, go, off you go. Slight off on, click, reinforce. So the leg pressure now is not a pressure to drive going forward, it's a cue. It says tap, cluck, target. So now we've got him responding to the cluck. And so now we're going to add in the leg cue a little bit. So he starts to understand what that pressure means and what it feels, but we're starting to rebuild or counter condition that old association he has with it, and he's creating the motion from him. Now if you cluck and then wait a moment and then present the target, and you feel when you cluck, he's going, okay, I'm going to walk, where is my target? That's a good thing. That's when I would start putting the leg on, off, cluck, go. If he doesn't respond to the leg pressure, I would not continue with the leg pressure. It is not, we're not driving it as a cue like that. So, I mean, it's not to be pressure, pressure, pressure till you go. If it doesn't work, I would go back to a light on, off pressure. I mean, and I'm talking the slightest. I mean, just like woof, woof, just the slightest. So it's a slight sensation like a fly touching him. And then the cluck and then the target. And just repeat the process, because we know the cluck and the target at this point are very strong. So we just want we want to pair it ever so slightly with that. Does that all make sense? It's one of those touchy-feely art areas, but it's really important that it comes from him and his choice to do it, and not for him to feel pressured to do it. Now, I would take this slow. I'd rather see you go slow and build it up slowly than going too fast. But as I break it all down to these steps that sound very long, I imagine he is going to show you that he gets the idea and will probably move forward with it quite easily when he gets the idea. Still keep these sessions very short and sweet, because he still has all this old history with it. And remember, as we move into this place, you need to go really slow, because we're really trying to reweigh those scales. I always look at things like this. I use this analogy all the time. I look at it as scales. So this behavior he's not doing, he finds it more reinforcing to hold still, not very reinforcing to go forward under saddle. So every time we put a weight on this side of the scale, meaning a reinforcement, every time we reinforce this behavior, we put another weight on this side of the scale, another weight on this side of the scale, another weight, till it gets to a point where you're going to see more of the go and less stop, but you're still at a teeter point. Pretty soon it's going to be the other way. But it's really important that we build that time and realize you are making progress. Just give it a few weeks. I tell people, give it 30 days. you know, and usually about 2.5 weeks, you start seeing some really big changes. Okay, so keep me posted on how that all goes. When it's going great, by the way, with it, and they're listening to the forward leg, then I would back the target off a little bit more. But let me know. Keep me posted how all that goes. I know you'll turn it around. I've been involved in this gobs and gobs and gobs, and we get lots of horses going forward quite nicely. Anyway, so Carrie, keep me posted. And if you have questions or progress you'd like to report, please let me know at shawnakarrasch.com or askshawna.com. And by the way, Carrie, I will be in Australia in March. So keep an eye out. All right, until next time, enjoy getting your horse on target. Bye.